Howdy, friends. Steve DePoe here for the Rosa Realty team with this week's Real Estate Vlog for North Texas. Today, 5.5 real estate predictions for 2021. Let's get started. So interest rates, number one, interest rates in 2020 kind of bottomed out, right? Some of them I saw some interest rates that were 1.9, 275, 2.5. So they pretty much bottomed out in 2020. In 2021, they're predicting a slight increase or slight rise somewhere between 3.1 and 3.3. If you remember last week's vlog, basically were just predictions. They predicted 3.25. Okay, so 3.1 to 3.3 is right in that sweet spot there of 3.25. If you're waiting for interest rates to go any lower, I mean to the ones or to the again back into the twos, I wouldn't hold my breath and I wouldn't wait. I think that the interest rates we're seeing now, we keep on hearing the term historic lows, right? Well, they are historic lows. Typically, they're around the fours and fives, which are still, unbelievably low. But interest rates in the threes, 3.2, 3.3 are very low. And if you're waiting for them to go lower, I'd say stop. Let's find a property now. Let's move up or downsize or whatever you want to do, but get that mortgage now because interest rates are only going to fluctuate a little bit, and then eventually you can see due to inflation and stuff will eventually start to increase. Home sales. So in 2020, home sales rose by about 3.9%. Okay, in 21 they're predicting them to be up about 6.9%, or almost pretty close to double, right, of what they were. That's still not the level that it was in 2006. Okay, before that was a year or two before the housing crisis in 2008, 9, and 10. But housing sales they're expecting to be around 6.9 this year, which means there's going to be a lot of activity. So if you want to get involved in it, it's good to get involved in it quickly, so you can find the house that you want, and not have to kind of settle, you might want to say. Prices in 2020 rose about 7.5%, which is amazing considering what we went through. Now there's a reason for that. In 2021, they're expecting housing prices to be closer to a 4 to 7% increase. So we'll see what happens there. Again, prices are rising, so it's good to get in, on the bottom floor, where you can find something affordable. Tie that low interest rate mortgage into the house that you want, and then move forward. One of the reasons housing prices rose that 7.4% last year was because of the lack of inventory. Okay, the inventory was low, and so that meant that if there was a good house came on the market, there was multiple bidders, which then drove up the price, which then drove up the overall costs. And then if I had a house, if I have a house and I know that my neighbor sells for this much, I'm going to raise my price, and then bingo, it's kind of the snowball effect. That's why they went up the 4.7%. New housing sales and new housing starts. New house sales increased by around 8% last year. They're expecting a growth of around 16.9% this year for new housing sales. New house increases last year was around 21.5%, and they're expecting to be around 18.7% this year, which means again what? Which means a little bit lower inventory, which means a little bit of a housing shortage. Now we know here in North Texas, and we've been saying it for all year last year, that there is a housing shortage in North Texas, and so this is only going to make that worse. Okay. Forbearance. So we know this. Whoever heard the term forbearance, and now it's like all over the place, right? You can't turn around without hearing forbearance. So since October of last year, what's significant about October is that's when the forbearance and the restrictions that the administration put on mortgage companies kind of expired. Okay, so forbearance declines were around about 8% by the end of October. And then on all active loans was about 5.2%, and that's based upon all active loans, right? And so for the loan forbearances were then down, which means that people, as they got jobs, as they re-entered the workforce, rather than relying on unemployment or what have you, for people came off of forbearance, they caught up on their mortgages, and all was kind of right with the world. So forbearance was down, and the system that the administration put in place was working. Migration. Um, so people aren't as mobile, you could say, as they had been in the past, and part of that is why. Part of that is, in the past, if you wanted to work for a company in Cincinnati, okay, you had to move to Cincinnati. Where today, depending on what that job is, if it's sales or customer support or customer relations or whatever, you could do that remotely and over the phone. Okay, so people don't have to be as mobile as they used to be. That's number one. Number two, people are moving to the suburbs. There is this kind of move towards the suburbs, or move to the burbs, as they're calling it, but it's not as big as we once thought. Okay, what I mean by that is, because of COVID, because of the summer of 2020, we thought there'd be this mass exodus out to the suburbs, and it wasn't. Okay, it was, people are moving, and the people are moving at a higher rate than used to move out to the suburbs, but it's not this mass exodus from the cities like we thought that it might be. So the migration into the suburbs is not as huge, but it's still there. Next week, 2.5 trends that are happening in real estate right now today. This is kind of an interesting one. Hope you tune in for that. This is Steve DePoe with the Rose Realty team. I'm going to bounce.